Welcome to the Garden Gamble, where we're planting hope, taking chances, and growing memories for every season. I'm Ricky Clausen, owner of Clausen's Greenhouse in northern Minnesota. This podcast is for anyone who's ever stood in the garden, greenhouse, or backyard wondering if they're doing it right. Here we talk real-life gardening, the wins, the mistakes, and everything we learn along the way. Whether you're new to plants or have dirt permanently under your nails, you're in the right place. Let's take the gamble and grow together. Hey everyone, it's Ricky and welcome back to another episode of the Garden Gamble podcast. And today we are continuing our mini series within our cut flower series. And we are continuing our favorite cut flower series. Last week we talked about snapdragons. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and take a quick listen. Today we are moving on in that series and we are talking about the workhorse of the flower farm and the cut flower world, and that is the zinnia. Zinnias are absolutely wonderful. These are probably going to be the most common cut flower that you see on flower farms and in cutting gardens, and there is a good reason for it, and we're going to deep dive into that today. And I'm just really excited to be talking about zinnias because they are by far one of my favorite cut flowers that we grow in our flower farm here at Clausen's Greenhouse. I'm recording this on July 9th, and this week was the first week that I was able to harvest a few zinnias, which was perfect timing because our subscriptions just started this week. So we were able to add just a few zinnias into those subscription bouquets for our subscription holders, and they are just so fun. So what a fitting time to be talking about zinnias here on the podcast this week. So today we're going to be talking about why we love it, some things to kind of watch for with zinnias, and we're just going to talk all about them. So hopefully you learn a little something today and maybe try your hand at growing zinnias in the future. But one of the main reasons I love zinnias in the flower farm and for cut flowers is because they come in so many different colors and sizes. I can use them in so many different ways. I grow a number of different varieties of zinnias here, and I've tried a few in the past that I'm not growing anymore, but there are thousands of varieties that you can choose from. And at the end of this episode, I will talk about my favorite varieties and the ones that I use most frequently here at our flower farm. The one thing that you have to kind of consider when you are out and about, either shopping at your greenhouses or garden centers in the spring, or if you are shopping for seeds online going into the growing season, is that zinnias come in a number of sizes as well. And you really want to look for those ones that are nice and tall if cutting is going to be your goal with the zinnias, because there are dwarf varieties that we've talked about like in previous episodes that are more for just bedding plants and in the landscapes and in like pots and containers. So you really want to look for those nice tall varieties of zinnias when you are out shopping. And the other size thing that I'm talking about too is the actual flower itself. So there are many varieties that are massive flower heads, and then there are some that are just a little bit smaller. And that, like I mentioned, is why I love them so much, is because I can get focal flowers out of zinnias. I can get disc flowers out of zinnias. I can kind of use them as a filler if needed, but there are just so many different ways to use a zinnia in bouquets, and they are definitely the workhorse in the flower farm and in cutting gardens, in my opinion, because when it does come time to harvest them, you can get like 14 cuts out of just one plant. So you are getting so much bang for your buck with zinnias because they are just going to produce and produce and produce for you basically all season long. Another reason why I love them is they are heat and fairly drought tolerant as well, especially once they're established. They do great. The one thing to kind of keep in mind though is when you're going through a stretch of hot weather, yes, they are drought tolerant, but especially when it's hot, you really don't want them to like get wilty or go through a stretch of drought, because they are pretty susceptible to diseases like powdery mildew, and that can really come on in stretches of hot weather. So we are actually moving right now into some really hot weather, so that's something that I'm going to have to keep an eye out for. I was just looking at the 10-day, and we've got a few days coming up in the high 80s and into the 90s, so I'm definitely going to have to keep an eye out for diseases, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here later in the episode as well. One of the other reasons that zinnias are so popular is because it's really easy to save their seeds. So if you want to save seeds for the following year, it's really easy to do. It's a really fun project to do with kids. So if you've got kids helping you in the flower farm, your own kids, and just want a fun project to do with them, seed saving for zinnias is a really easy one to start with. They also have a short days to maturity. So they are one that you can start really late into the season and still get to enjoy them before that first frost. I have one spot in the flower farm right now that I'm still considering maybe even throwing in a few more zinnias, maybe some sunflowers, because they are short days to maturity. I haven't quite decided yet, but like I said, I'm recording this episode on July 9th, and I think the latest I've ever started zinnias so far was, I think, July 15th. And I was able to get a crop out of it like the end of September. So I kind of got lucky. We had a late frost the year that I did that, so I was able to get a few cuts. But that was the latest I ever did it. And I don't know if I'd ever go that late again. So that's kind of why I'm still on the fence about whether I want to start zinnias in that spot or not. But we'll see. So one thing to keep in mind if you are growing zinnias in general and growing zinnias in the flower farm or in your backyard cutting garden is you're really going to want to try to avoid overhead irrigation. So if you've got that spray nozzle and you're watering, you really want to get that as close to the roots as possible and try to avoid that overhead irrigation, because it can cause spotting on the flowers and foliage, and it may also cause the soil to splash onto the plant, which can just promote diseases. Where we really encourage drip irrigation, that is going to reduce like any of that moisture sitting on the leaves or on the flower head, so you're not going to get that spotting. And we also want you to use weed fabric if possible, because that weed fabric is going to reduce that splash. Especially, you can't help a heavy rain. There's nothing that we can do about that. But if we can reduce that splash a little bit, that would be great. And then the weed fabric as well kind of helps heat up that soil, especially early on, to help them get well established. So if you can, use some weed fabric, use drip irrigation rather than overhead watering if at all possible. All right, so for cut flowers, when you are planting them, I like to plant my zinnias in succession plants, and I do 3 succession plantings of zinnias myself. Here in northern Minnesota, our growing season is a little bit shorter than most, so I do 3. You might read that you can do succession plantings every 2 weeks throughout the whole summer, but I just do 2 that I start ahead of time in our little plug trays or packs that I plant out after the chance of frost has passed. Plant those ones out, and then I do 1 direct seeding. So I've got 3 different successions there, and that has been able to carry me throughout the whole season over the last few years. So I think I'm going to stick with that. As I kind of mentioned before, all zinnias are pretty susceptible to that powdery mildew, especially as we reach those hotter temps. And it's really important to catch it quickly so it doesn't spread. So that's something to look out for also. So when it comes time to plant your zinnias, if your goal is to use them as a cut flower, you're going to want to plant them a little bit closer together than you would if you were just placing them out in your landscape or in a container. I personally use 6-inch spacing for the zinnias, and that has done really well for me. You definitely wouldn't want to go much closer than that, because with how susceptible they are to diseases, you want to make sure that they have good airflow as well. So yeah, I use 6-inch spacing. That's going to really encourage them to kind of stretch, so I get some longer stems as well. And when the goal is to get multiple harvests off of each plant, you're going to want to pinch them to encourage that branching. So after they have 2 to 3 sets of true leaves, when they're little seedlings, you're going to want to pinch the tops, and that's going to encourage branching so you get multiple stems off of that plant. I personally don't use support netting for zinnias. You certainly can. I know a few flower farmers use the corral type support system. That's definitely an option that you can do, but I haven't seen a need at our flower farm for support netting or corralling, but it just kind of depends on if you have a very windy location, how they're looking, and each year might be a little bit different too. But if you want to use support netting, I would get that on early, or the corral system, like I said, is probably a better option. When it comes time to harvest, you'll know that a zinnia is ready to be picked when you give it the wiggle test. And the wiggle test is when you take that stem and hold it about 6 to 8 inches down, give it a little shake, and if that flower head on the top is flopping all over the place and is real loose and wobbly, it's not quite ready. But if you grab that stem and wiggle it and it stays nice and firm, then it's ready to harvest. There are lots of videos online, and I'll probably do one here this summer too, that kind of give you examples of the wiggle test. So give it a wiggle test and you'll know whether it is ready to harvest or not. And if you harvest it before it is nice and firm on that flower stem and the head is nice, it will wilt in your vase. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. The nice thing about zinnias is their harvest window is so much larger than many of the other plants that we grow and different cut flowers that we grow, because yes, you can pick them as soon as you do the wiggle test and you know that they're ready, but you can also leave them past that, and sometimes the zinnias will actually open up a little bit more and get a little bit fluffier. So don't feel like you have to pick them immediately when they pass that wiggle test. That's just kind of the starting point for that. So you can kind of keep an eye on that. And if you aren't getting out there and cutting and using every stem, I would definitely encourage you to deadhead them frequently so they don't put all of their energy into going to seed. They want to put their energy into creating more flowers that you can harvest later on. So keeping up on the deadheading is really important if you're not already using every stem. So one kind of unique thing about zinnias as well is many cut flowers can sit in a cooler or sit in your fridge to kind of help with the longevity of their life after they've been cut. But zinnias don't like temps of a traditional cooler. So you're going to want to store them in a cool, dark place above 45 degrees. So that is honestly why you don't see a lot of florists, like your typical florist in town, use zinnias very often, is because they don't transport well, because many of the transport trucks are cooler trucks and the zinnias just don't like that cooler temps. Where here in the summertime, now you might see a few more local florists purchasing zinnias from local flower farmers like myself, because it doesn't have to sit in a cooler for so long. It can just be much more direct to consumer. So that's kind of a nice little perk about supporting local as well. Once you've harvested your zinnias and you've conditioned them, they should give you a vase life of about 5 to 7 days. Zinnias are also considered a dirty flower, and they can definitely benefit from a drop or two of bleach in the vase just to kind of help keep them clean. They're just going to make that water kind of mucky looking, and the little bit of bleach is going to definitely help. So if you've got a big bunch of zinnias, switching out that water is going to benefit it as well, just giving it clean water every couple days. Now, some of my favorite varieties that we grow here at our flower farm at Clausen's Greenhouse, I love the Queenie series, the Queenie Lime, there's Queenie Orange, there's a number of them in that series, but I have great luck with them. I love the way they look. I love the way they hold up in the field and in the vase. They are definitely one of my favorites. I love the bright lime green colors and the shades of orange and green and purple and green, and I think there's a red in there too, but the Queenie series, I really enjoy that. We do sell, I think, just a couple of varieties of the Queenie series here at the greenhouse, and you can also find them online in seed packets. My second favorite is the Benary's Giant series as well. They have a number of different colors. We sell a Benary's Giant mix here at the greenhouse. I love the wine color, the Benary's Giant wine. It's like a deep purple color that matches with a lot of things, and it's just very rich, and I love the color of that one specifically. But the Benary's Giant in general, I love it. I use that one frequently as a focal flower in bouquets and arrangements, and they are just a profuse bloomer. They bloom for me all season long, and I do quite a few different colors of those. And then there's also just your classic cut and come again varieties. There are many zinnia varieties, and like I mentioned earlier in the episode, I do grow I think I have 6 or 7 different varieties in the flower farm this year of zinnias, but those two are my favorites. So the Queenie series and the Benary's Giant are my favorites. One other little thing that is wonderful about zinnias is they are very pollinator friendly, especially for the butterflies. Every year that I've grown zinnias, they are covered in monarch butterflies, like halfway through the season. Like, it's just so fun to watch them on the zinnias. They just hang out there. And yes, so zinnias are very pollinator friendly, which is just an added bonus to an already amazing flower. So that kind of wraps up a little bit about zinnias. We talked a lot about the pros and the cons, and I hope that you give zinnias a try if you haven't already, and let me know what your favorite varieties are. And right now we are about mid-July. We're in the thick of gardening season right now, where July can really be a tough month as we wait for everything to grow and get established. And maybe you're not even a flower farmer or doing cut flowers. Maybe you're a vegetable grower and you're just waiting for that harvest. Everything's growing right now. We're kind of in a season of waiting where the heat is intense, the pests come out, the weeds are crazy, and it's really easy to kind of want to give up here in the middle of July. But just hang in there. We know it's going to be worth it, and eventually we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. So hang in there. We're in the middle of July. Those armfuls of flowers and those baskets full of fresh produce are right around the corner. We have one more episode in this mini series of favorite cut flowers, and then we're going to do a cut flower Q&A episode to wrap up our series all about cut flowers. So if you have any questions you want answered, let us know. You can either leave a comment, send us a message, or email me at ricky@claussensgreenhouse.com. I would love to know if you have any burning questions about cut flowers or growing anything for your backyard cutting gardens. I think this Q&A is really going to be a fun way to answer some of those short, quick questions that you have that may not otherwise have a full episode all about them. So if you have any questions, please send them our way. Like I said, we've got one more episode in this mini series of favorite cut flowers, and then we will do that Q&A. So start sending me those questions, and hopefully I can get those answered for you. Happy growing. Enjoy the summer, and we will catch you next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me on The Garden Gamble. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with a fellow plant lover. Gardening isn't a gamble when you have the right guidance, and you don't have to figure it out alone. Until next time, take care.